Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Robert Trujillo, joining us. He is here to share about his company, Orthovated, and how it can help practices with clinical onboarding. From hiring to getting new clinical employees up to speed to employee retention, we're going to cover it all. So let's get started. Hey Docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at GetSmileSuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence. All righty, everybody. Robert, I am so excited to have you on the show today. And I am hoping that you can just start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself and also about your company, Orthovated.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I've always just loved talking with you, and this is going to be just such a fun episode to share something that I love. So my name's Robert Trujillo. I'm an orthodontist. I did my training back in OU, Oklahoma in 2013. Bought my practice in Sammamish, Washington. So this is actually my 10-year anniversary there at this practice, which is just crazy to think about how fast time goes by. But yeah, I've been practicing for 10 years there, and I've always had a lot of other interests and passions as well, and some other things. And one thing that I recognized midway through my career was just the struggle with feeling really good about training your team. You hire someone, you don't have a whole plan in place, you don't have a process that you're proud of in place. And I found myself feeling a little like beating myself up over it. Oh God, like I could be doing better, or I'm not supporting my new hire. And it was really creating a lot of like stress around the onboarding and new hire process. I was fortunate to have a pretty solid team most of the whole time. There were times where we were growing and adding new people and had those challenges. And so that's what really got me inspired with Orthovated. I don't know if have you heard of Brendan Burchard before?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So I had been to one of his high performance academies. Like I'm like a big fan and have been following his work for 15 years. And I was at one of his academies and he was just talking about solving this problem. And I was just spitballing it really with the people sitting next to me. We were just sharing our ideas. And my idea really is that we really want to be able to hire our new person, train them. Could you imagine what would that feel like if you had a system in place that made you feel empowered and made your new hire feel good and could train them? And it sounds weird, but just like talking through that out loud, I know I didn't explain that very well right then. In my mind, I'm visualizing it. But something in me just clicked in that moment, this one moment in San Diego, where I was like, this would be really fun. I love to teach. I love to share things that I learn. It's one of my favorite things. And I love orthodontics. And so teaching it was something that was not only really fun, but it was something that didn't necessarily require an overabundance of effort. And I decided I'm going to do this. I found a college videographer who was studying videography, and I asked if he could help me, and we worked together. We met every weekend for like 6 months to a year.
Wow.
And we just filmed like 8 hours here, a few hours there, and just put this whole thing together, this whole vision. I built it as I went. And my true vision was to help the orthodontist the assistant love what they do as much as we do as the orthodontist. Because I think when you love what you do and you know the why behind what you're doing, it just makes it so much better. So that's how Orthovated was born in that process.
And what a vision. And I love what you said, taking what I would say is a very big pinch point in our industry and seeing that need and going, how can I do this and not only help myself in my own practice, but help other doctors and team members as well. And one of the things that I'm always talking a lot about when I'm out speaking or whatnot, or when anytime I have a chance, is that I really feel like we need to be helping our employees see that there is a career within our industry. And as you're saying this, if we can teach our assistants to love what they're doing, and I think it is leaning into that. This isn't just a stepping stone to go somewhere else. I'm giving you some really great training that hopefully you're going to love what you're doing, and then in turn stay within our industry. So I love that it all started from a seminar and came to fruition to be what it is now, Orthovated.
Yeah, it was really exciting. And I totally agree with you. I think to add to that, so many orthodontists that I've worked with, they just never, we have this business, we put so much into it. It's so organized. We have a schedule. Everything is mapped out perfectly with doctor time, assistant time, the whole systems. And yet so many people don't take, the importance of onboarding and like that whole HR side of things as serious as it could be. And I think that in hiring someone, the ultimate goal is long-term retention. And there's some best practices we can do to really improve that long-term retention. Some things we can do that our Fortune 500 companies, they practice on a regular basis, and HR 101 practices of things we could also be doing, because we're also business owners and we have goals and responsibilities for our new hires and their growth as well.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into, as I've had an opportunity to work with and peruse Orthovated, you talk a lot and emphasize pre-boarding. And I'm just wondering if you would unpack that for us. Talk to us a little bit about, I know you're starting to allude to it already, the importance of that and how that is different than onboarding, let's just say. So I'll let you unpack that for us.
Yeah. So pre-boarding and onboarding, kind of in the HR world, by definition, our pre-boarding is like the moment in time that you offer a position and it's accepted to their very first day on the job, their first day of work. So that could be like in the past, once I hired someone and they like started the next day, that's a very short pre-boarding phase. And I don't recommend that. Sometimes things happen and it has to be that way, but usually we want a pre-boarding stage that's a little longer. Onboarding is the moment they walk through that front door until they are officially, quote unquote, fully trained. And so it has a start, it has a middle, and it has an end. Mm-hmm. So pre-boarding really is going back. It's when they've accepted the job to when they actually walk in that door. And that period of time is really important, that we're interacting with our new hire, we're engaging with them to make sure they show up. Because I read a stat that 22% of new hires actually ghost the practice or the business. This is just overall study, and don't even show up for their job. So we can really reduce those numbers by having a proper pre-boarding phase. So pre-boarding, really, I think it's so important because of the concept of first impression psychology. We all do this in our practice. When we answer the phone, we're like smiling and we provide excellent first contact. When the patient walks through that door, we stand up, we might offer them coffee or water. They are getting an incredible first impression experience of our practices. We're not always giving that same first impression priority to our new hires when they walk in the door, especially if we're not prepared for them. So the pre-boarding phase is really a time where we want to come up with a list of things that we're going to do consistently for our team. That might be sending them a gift basket or swag or flowers, sending them an email, letting them know this is the time we're going to start. Here's like the traffic situation in the morning. This is where you'd park. This is, how you'll want to dress, just all those things, because
love it.
It's like going to school for the first day. Everyone knows each other, but you don't know anyone, and it can be really stressful. So really engaging with them and making them feel welcome and feel good, it goes a really long way. And there was one really interesting study actually done in universities where the students would evaluate the professor. And they would evaluate the professor, like they did the study where it would be in the first 6 minutes. So after 6 minutes of that professor walking through the door, seeing them, that would be their final evaluation. They did all these controls, and then what they found is that the actual final evaluation was basically the same as the first 6 minutes. And what we know is that first impressions can't really be undone. And even though we think we can undo them, it creates like a subconscious bias. And if your new hire walks through that door and we're not like there to greet them, just like that new patient, and we're not maybe doing like a coffee greet or something that makes them feel welcomed and special and supported, then we're really missing an opportunity to really imprint on that new hire to induct them into our office culture. So
Yeah.
pre-boarding, I think, is a critical component of it all.
And I love that you're diving into this because I feel like for so long in our industry, we have had an abundance mentality that there's employees out there just anywhere they're going to want to come work for us. And really, it's a scarcity at this point where it is hard to find employees that want to stay and want to be a part of our practices. And I love that you are touching on this. And one of our hot words right now in our industry is culture, right? And experience. But to think about, are we doing that with our employees, not only focusing on our patients that are coming through the door, but our employees and especially our new ones that are entering our practice? And for you to just highlight this, I think is such a great thing for us to be thinking about as we are maybe even changing. I think you're really highlighting an area that I don't think we do a good job with in our industry. And to be able to be identifying that and really thinking about that is very next level, which I love.
Oh yeah, it's so important. I couldn't agree more with that. I think this is one way to just take our practices to the next level. So I haven't really gone 100% on creating an incredible onboarding process that's systematized. It's a checklist. When I hire someone, it almost runs itself and really trains the new hire without so much anxiety and stress on both parts of the new hire and the doctor.
Yeah, yeah. So, any other thoughts on how we can do it better in regard to our new hire setup? And we've got, you really did a great job at really differentiating between that onboarding and pre boarding. But when we get into that phase, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so with the pre-boarding, you want to have those checklists. Like, for example, you want to know what questions are you going to ask during the interview. Like even before, that's like the recruitment phase. But the pre-boarding phase, you want to have that checklist that your whole office is aware of. Like their scrubs are ready, name tags ready, coffee orders are ready if they're coming in that first day. Maybe a gift has been sent, email has been sent. Maybe everyone on the team takes a little video, 30 seconds, and says hi, and they're so excited for them to come in, and that's sent, texted to the new hire. So we have a checklist, and I'm a big fan of having those and making sure that we're consistent with them. So leading that into the onboarding phase, it'd really be the same thing. So our onboarding can be broken down into like different phases also. So for onboarding, we have like our induction, which is like our high level training, which would be like getting that person into the practice, like integrating them into the culture and connection with the team, and then going through all the compliance things, like the legal things we have to do for our new hires. But then having a checklist to actually support the new hire so that what's really important is successful at their job. So onboarding by definition is we are going to train our new hires so that they can be successful in their role. But so many people use onboarding as more of an orientation or more of we're just follow me around and it works, and it's worked for us in the past, and I've done it too. It's just not the best way. It's a lot more stressful than it needs to be. It's a lot more anxiety than it needs to be. And nowadays, with the tsunami of turnover and all of this like chaos of COVID, I think that we're really going through new hires a little bit more rapidly. And so we're like going through a little more stress than maybe we did before. So having this checklist now and having a system where we actually sit down and write out, okay, what do I need to train my new hire to be successful at their job? What is every single step I could possibly think of? And we have to write it down. If it's not written down, then it's really not like an official plan or something we can implement in our practice.
And I can't help but think that if practices are adopting this and really starting to think about this, again, changing the way we think about our hiring process just in general, I've got to believe that this is going to help us when it comes to employee retention as well. What do you think about that? Are you seeing that in your practice, that in doing these types of things, it's really helping keep employees engaged and active within the practice?
Oh, absolutely. It's really twofold. First, I would say if you have someone who's not a performer and they're just not fit for the practice, by having these systems in place, you are going to identify those people very early, and you're not going to have as often these situations where you just aren't feeling it and you're just like, oh, I hope it works someday, and you don't have like objective information to decide if this is working. And so you're able to move on a little quicker and maybe plan an exit strategy for this person, or if it's not the right fit. But in terms of the long-term retention, if it is a right fit, we know there's actually been some studies by the Society of Human Resource and Management on what is the number one like correlation of long-term retention of an employee. And in all these controls, they found that the number one was actually recruitment, which is a little surprising, but it's true. So your ad and your interview are actually the most important part of long-term retention. So really dialing in on that is a whole nother topic. But for this kind of onboarding phase, that's actually the second most high predictor of long-term retention. So we really do need to prioritize our onboarding and make sure that they're feeling successful with their job. I read another stat that was 89% of new hires don't have the knowledge to hit the ground running. And even if they've been an assistant for 10 years or 5 years, like they don't know your systems, they don't know your practice. They're going to come in, and if they don't have the right support for learning or being successful at their job, it's not going to be the right fit, even if maybe it could be if we had those in place. So it is a big deal with long-term retention. And I think on a different topic here, but if we look at I guess it'd be like the model of learning. And I think a lot of people have probably heard of this, but it really goes through these phases where we have the first phase is unconscious competence, which is you're excited. You're like, oh, I love this. I got this new job. I'm going to be an assistant. It's amazing. And then very quickly we learn conscious incompetence. We learn, oh God, I don't know anything. I don't know what I'm doing. And so many people, this is a model of learning in psychology that's been developed a long time ago. We all go through it with anything, any new endeavor. And just like our new assistant, very quickly they go into our conscious incompetence. We're very aware of what we don't know. We're starting to feel overwhelmed and stressed. And then when we get to that phase, if we don't have the support in place, then we quickly go into despair, and then we end up quitting. But if you have the right systems in place and the support, and really just acknowledging that this is what happens with our new hires and helping them acknowledge it for themselves so they're not taking it so personable, we can move through that despair and get to the other side of the curve, which is going to be our conscious competence, and then eventually our unconscious competence, which is where we just know what we're doing without even really having to think about it.
Yeah, I think you are so exactly right. When I'm training and we're training in offices, I'm always trying to, keep everybody informed that when somebody's starting, like you said, they're elevated, they're excited, and then they get in there and they realize, like you said, I don't know a thing about what I'm doing. And it can feel very defeating because it can actually take, sometimes I'll say when we're training a front office team member, it can take them up to 6 months to really understand what's going on. And imagine 6 months of feeling like you're on shaky ground all the time. And you got to have the right person that'll stick through and be able to come out on the other side and be like, okay, now I'm getting it. I always equate it to when new team members are learning a new position, they're looking down at their shoes and they're just one foot in front of the other. They're doing all the things that you told them to do, but they don't have an understanding of the big picture. Where when they get to that other side, like you're talking about, and they can lift their head up and they just naturally know I understand the wire progression. I understand what we're doing. I understand why we don't book a bonding at 3:00 in the afternoon now versus I'm just playing Tetris and there's an open spot and I'm plugging an appointment that looks like the same color into it. So do you mind just opening, going on that a little bit and talking to us? Because I think this ties into exactly why you developed this program.
Yeah, I think that onboarding in general has like those different parts. We have the 4 C's of it.
By now, we all know I talk to a lot of doctors and give advice to practices in every stage of their life cycle. And one question my docs ask all the time is, who do you recommend for marketing to attract more new patients from the internet? My answer? Easy. I have been recommending Mary Kay Miller and her team at Kaleidoscope for the better part of a decade. Why? They are thorough, professional, and transparent. Kaleidoscope Digital Marketing is who you want to talk to because they understand how to market in the orthodontic world and they offer tools that are affordable and easy to use. I'm telling you, if you're looking to step up your digital presence, Kaleidoscope should be your first call. Go to contactkl.com to request your free digital marketing consultation. That's contactkl.com. We all know running and growing an orthodontic practice isn't easy, and technology is supposed to help you, but oftentimes your practice management software doesn't. Some of them are even clunky and need lots of third-party add-ons. That's why I recommend Greyfinch to my startup and existing clients, because Greyfinch is different. Greyfinch is an all-in-one web-based platform that saves you time and boosts your client base, productivity, and bottom line, with no downloads or third-party software needed. It even has tools you can't find anywhere else, like televisits, two-way email and text messaging, a patient self-service hub, and much more. Want to see how it can grow your practice? Visit greyfinch.com/Jill Allen and see why countless leading practices have made the switch.
The first C is what we call the compliance. Compliance is really getting your RDA license, hanging it up, getting your tax paperwork done. It's a really important part of it because it's required by law. Sometimes you hear stories of people, they're so busy and so unprepared for this new hire that walks in the door, they don't even do their tax paperwork and then they quit. And that's like an issue. And just being prepared during that pre-boarding, again, knowing what you're going to do is really important. But the compliance is not just the law. It's also our passwords and our practice. It's our setting them up with their phone, their email, all of those things. And then we have our next C, which is clarification. And clarification starts with a high level learning, like how you would write an essay. You would start with like broad learning. Oh, this is what an orthodontic assistant is, and this is what the other people in the practice are and what they do, and just narrowing it down to this is your role at this practice, and then teaching them those things. But then it very quickly goes into the in-depth training portion. Now, the in-depth training of onboarding in the clarification C is the most important part of it, because that's the part that's going to help them be successful at their job. And unfortunately, what I find is that's actually the part that everybody is not doing. And I think we're not doing it because for a lot of reasons. I think part of it is just overwhelm, or maybe the belief that, it's not going to make a difference, or some sort of like limiting beliefs around it. Or maybe we're just not making it a priority and just getting it done and sitting down for a weekend with some other friend orthodontists and just like writing out like this whole thing and really nerding out on it. And as a result, we don't have a system to train our new hire. And we end up basically adapting to the rule that work is going to expand to the amount of time that we give it. So before you know it, it's been a year and they're still like not knowing how to do this or that procedure, or maybe they just never quite learned it along the way. But if we have a system in place, we can not only do in-depth training, but actually schedule it so that it's like, oh, these days we're going to do this, and make sure it's understood. These days we're going to do this, and be really strategic about it so that there's a start, a middle, and an end. Now, we know that's really important for onboarding, but there's also the cultural and the connection aspect. And some interesting stats, I looked them up. I can't remember the exact number, but it was really impressive. I remember feeling really impressed by how many people will leave their job for lesser pay, for more inconvenience, for better culture. There was a stat that basically said some like really high percentage of people would do that because culture is really important. And people will stay at a job for less pay, even if they're maybe like not feeling like inspired anymore, or they're not growing, because there's a best friend there, or they really connect with their coworkers. So having an onboarding aspect that really focuses on connection, like relationships between your team members, and an onboarding plan that focuses on the culture of your practice, you really are improving like the retention of that new hire, because they're more likely to stay at your practice, and you're going to build your dream team that way. So the culture, that's an interesting word you mentioned. It's like the buzzword, I think, of the last 10 years here. It's really one of those words where I think it gets thrown around a lot, but a lot of people, they don't really stop to think what does this word culture mean? And kind of my favorite definition of it really would be that we all have our individual personality. But then when we all get together, it creates like this monster, like this new energy, this new person. And if we don't have some guidelines and some structure and some like vision of what's the personality going to be, then it just morphs into its own thing. Sure. And there's clashing. And so as part of our onboarding, we really need to stop and think, what is the personality of my practice? How does our practice act? How do we engage with people? What's most important to us for that? What's the most important thing in the world for me, for my practice to be like? And then basically setting very obvious parameters around that with your team so that everyone knows this is who we are as a team and this is how we can support each other. And then the connection phase would be really scheduling those lunches, scheduling maybe your new hire getting coffee dates every 2 weeks or every month. We do know that if a new hire has a meeting every 2 weeks, they're significantly more engaged with the onboarding process. So, I know it's hard to fit in those little meetings, but setting time aside to really help support that new hire and meet with them so that we can make them feel heard and also learn how they're learning and if we need to change anything along the way.
Yeah.
So those would be the 4 C's there.
Yeah, that's great. And I think I'm just going to echo what you just said. Taking the time, I think one of the biggest things that we do, I think, wrong in our industry is thinking that we need to wait 90 days to talk to our new employee. Yeah. If you want somebody to stay an employee with you, you have got to make the time to connect with them. And I encourage that with my docs, even with existing employees. I call them rhythm meetings, where we need to be meeting with our team members every 2 weeks, once a month, where we're sitting down one-on-one with them. How are things going? Where's your head at? And the most important question, what can I do for you? What can I do to help you in the practice? And I think if we can just change, again, that mindset that we have, that everybody just wants to work for us and they should be happy that they're working for us. It is definitely an employees market still out there. And I love this because you're really, I think, elevating this hiring experience for the team members coming on. And I believe that is what's going to help make team members stay or not stay in our practices.
Yeah. And I think when you said it's like a new hires market, like that's so true. But to add to that also, I think the idea, or how would I describe it? If we go like back in time in the 50s, like the workforce had a mindset of, oh, I'm proud of my job. I show up, I clock in, I do my work, I get promoted, and then I go home kind of thing. And there's like a cultural expectation of what they require from their employer. And then we fast forward and if we look at the research, there's actually like fancy names for it. I can't remember, but it's the industrial like workforce. And then you have this new workforce. And then the newest one, which actually is just starting during 2020, is that our our new workforce these days, they expect something different from their employers. They don't expect to just show up and like work and get paid and leave necessarily. Some may, but the new workforce as a whole, they really are expecting to get more meaning out of their work.
Mm-hmm.
They need to
Mm-hmm.
feel more a part of something, and it has to have more purpose for them. And
Yeah.
so if we just treat them like, oh, you should be happy you just have a job or something like that, not that many of us would do that, but I think really emphasizing the importance of the connection, because that is what our new hires need. And that's what they expect. And they're going to move on if we're not able to provide that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, such good insight. So I'm curious, do you have some tips that we could use? I'm sure I've got a lot of docs that are like, oh my gosh, this is so good. They're taking all kinds of notes, but maybe just some tips for us on how to enhance maybe teaching and communication and help, as we've been talking about, help support those new hires as we're going along, onboarding them.
Yeah. Communication, that's something I find really fascinating. The more and more I learn about it, the more I just keep going down the rabbit hole of it. But I think starting with learning, like learning is something where how do we learn? If we think about what is learning, it's basically like associating something we know with something that we don't know. So if you were to just talk to your new hire and just be like, oh yeah, get the 1925 stainless steel and put it in the 022 slot or whatever, like there's no context to even understand what was said. So learning really needs to take place by coming up with creative ways or through story to explain things that actually make sense when the new hire is getting it or not. And to add to that, communication is something that is our responsibility. I think that so many of us are like, oh, I told you to chain 6 to 6 and do this and do that, but you didn't do it. What's wrong? Like you don't listen or whatever might be the thoughts. We might not say that out loud. But the reality is if the person you're communicating to does not get the message that you intended for them to get, then you are the one that didn't communicate correctly. They're not the one really at fault here. So you can never over communicate. I think there's some rules with communication that we need to think about a little more, which would be like, if I were to over communicate to you, like excessively, you would get the message, but it would probably come across as really condescending and not socially normal, and maybe just would create all these red flags in our interaction.
Yeah.
But you would get the message. But if I just communicate like casually, like playing it cool because I want to abide by like social norms of communication, I might just say, oh yeah, go ahead and do that, because it's not appropriate to give firm communication, then we're setting them up for failure and ourselves up for stress. So I think in communication, it's important to early on set the expectation of, hey, like I'm going to over communicate some things, and I want you to know I'm not doing it because I'm being condescending or this or that. I just want to make sure that I like go over it from many different angles so that your new hire is aware of that. So that would be like a good tip there.
Yes.
But then also to over communicate, like to say things many ways, the same thing many different ways, so that your new hire can get it. And then to take responsibility when they don't. When your new hire is struggling, to actually like ask yourself, what could I do better to get this message across? Like, how could I help support them? How could I say this in a different way? Because obviously learning is not taking place. There's not a known thing in our brain and an unknown that are fusing. And once they connect, it's like light bulb moment. They know exactly what it is now.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it makes me think of a little bit of leadership bias, right? Like we all naturally want to lead by our own communication style or leadership style, and that isn't everybody else's. And I love what you said. I think ultimately as business owners, it is up to us, or office managers, it is up to us to say, hey, maybe it's my style. Maybe it's something I'm doing that's making them not get this, versus automatically wanting to put the new hire at fault and say, oh, they just can't learn this. It could absolutely be just your style of training. This has been just great. And I know we could keep talking for hours about all of this. But if somebody wants to get a hold of you, Robert, and learn more about Orthovated, where can they do that? How can they find out more? How can they talk to you if they've got some questions just specifically for you?
Yeah, I have a website. It's www.orthovated.com. It's basically the whole course that I've created, which is really the in-depth training portion only. If they wanted to reach me and get support or even look at the program I've created, you can find everything you need on that website. There's even book a call with me. I have some times available throughout the week. I meet with people pretty regularly and just talk about what their needs are and see if is this program really something that might be helpful for them. But the program itself really still requires that we take responsibility and step in. We can't just like give these videos to our new hire and just let them train themselves. But the videos really bridge the gap significantly in the sense that these videos, they're 19 hours long. It's 80 videos. I go through every procedure I could basically think of and the foundation of ortho, the why of ortho. And I go through and really explain it kind of face to face, knee to knee, just like if I were talking to a new hire in the clinic and I show them like, hey, this is this wire and go through all the properties of it and really just share all of the information about the foundation of ortho so that after they go through this course, everything they're seeing in the office and as you're communicating with them, they're able to really connect the dots a lot easier and bridge the gap, like I mentioned, with learning, like taking the unknown and the known, they can now start to connect it. And it really expedites the learning process. And we're finding our new hires are becoming really competent in 90 days. And within a year, we're finding they're becoming like the best assistant on our team because they've really got it, the understanding of it to the next level. But yeah, orthovated.com. You can also email me at support@orthovated.com and I can share any information with you there as well.
Ah, that's great. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of people reaching out, so be prepared. Because we definitely need this help. So as you may know, I like to finish off Hey Docs with a little speed round. Are you ready to do the speed round with me?
Oh, yes.
Okay, here we go. Coffee or tea?
Mushroom coffee.
Ooh, that's
Yes.
a first. That's a first. I've
Yes.
always wanted to try it. I have not. So I'll have to.
It's amazing.
Okay.
It tastes weird, but it's amazing.
Okay. Do you have a favorite book?
Oh gosh, I feel like every book I'm reading is my favorite book in that moment. I'm really weird that way. But a book I find myself reading over and over would probably be like The Mountain Is You is a really good one, I think. It's just really like deep.
Yeah, great.
Connects the dots of life.
Yeah. All right, perfect. Favorite outdoor activity?
Hiking. I love snowshoeing, like out. I live in the Northwest Cascades, really close to the mountains. There's lots of snow actually on the mountain right by my house today.
That is my happy place. If I could just live in the mountains, I would be there all the time. And then if you could be remembered for one thing, what would that be?
I think it would be just knowing that I helped impact the lives of other people and helped encourage and empower them to live their best life.
Love that. And then my final question to wrap us up. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard one.
I know.
But I think I could probably think on that for a really long time, but I would say probably right now that you are not your emotions.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's really good. Robert, again, thank you so much for being on the Hey Docs. And I'm excited because I know we're going to have you on again. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill. This has been really fun. I appreciate your time.
Yep. See you later.
All right, see ya. Bye.